What are your thoughts on the missing tourist submarine that went down to see the Titanic? Submarines are fucking terrifying. End of story. I could never do anything where my finite supply of oxygen was counted in hours. Military submarines are capable of generating oxygen from seawater, as long as the reactor is working. Source: I used to work for the company that built them for the Navy. Being on a submarine that was docked was shitty enough. I can't imagine spending months inside one of those tin cans. Yeah, I don't care if I had all the money in the world. 2 places I'm never going are deep under the ocean or into space. That's scary as hell. It's looking like they're goners, so I just hope it imploded. The thought of being trapped in a little metal can on the seabed and stewing in your demise for days in pitch black while you either slowly freeze or suffocate to death. What could be worse? The terror and total despair, the panic and claustrophobia, the guilt of a father bringing his teenage son. I just hope it was quick. You know what could be worse? Them actually floating on the surface, seeing daylight, but still running out of air, because the only way out is for someone to remove the bolts from the outside. Apparently some searches of airplanes capable of using sonar buoy devices have recorded banging or tapping noises somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Newfoundland, so it's possible that this is happening. Edit. I gave multiple sources in a reply comment. People are saying the noises stopped as of Monday, but this is probably untrue. The noises were not detected at all until Tuesday afternoon. The noises were picked up on Tuesday afternoon and were happening in 30-minute intervals. That's all we know. Edit again. One interviewee calls the sounds spurious. https://news.sky.com/story/missing Titanic submersible. As Coast Guard does not know what the noises are, but they need to have hope 1290741, and worries they might be a distraction from the real location of the sub. Pure nightmare fuel. I never liked the ocean. I respect it, by staying far away. I didn't even think of the dark part. It just makes it so much worse. Honestly, this is the worst death I have heard of. Not even medieval torture measures up. There's 3 possibilities. 1. It imploded during its descent. 2. They're stuck underwater with no hope of rescue. 3. It's floating on the surface somewhere, but they're still stuck inside because it can only be opened from the outside. Option 4. The game controller they used for steering ran out of power and they didn't have a backup steering system, so can't nose up and surface. Lol, imagine being at the bottom of the ocean, surviving an accident in a cheap-ass sub and then managing to get back to the surface only to suffocate anyway cause bro forgot the door handle on the inside. I saw in another post that there isn't a door, they are sealed by a panel with bolts. I think it's pretty fucked up that some rich folk sunk and died and then 100 and some years later they did it again. Edit. Everyone knows that mostly poor folk died in the first sink, but we don't make fun of victims in this house, hence their absence from the above. I think it's more fucked up that the missing 5 billionaire tourists are getting constant news coverage. Meanwhile, 650 migrants drowned in a boat while the Greek Navy watched, and we got just 1 day of news coverage. I was going to ask why this is being covered so much. Oh, they have money, no one cares. You're correct, we do need more coverage on pressing issues instead of 5 people who willingly took a risk to look at a broken ship. People will pay a lot for the most realistic Titanic experience ever. A bit morbid, but, if they didn't go quickly, I wonder what the other passengers said to the CEO before they all died. I wouldn't be surprised if they killed him before the rest of them died. Dude. What a thought. The fewer people using the oxygen, the longer their oxygen lasts. I think we know who the tribute is. A movie will be out soon. I smell a Mr. Ballin video coming out in a few years. The 2023 Titan sub disaster, a short documentary. Fascinating horror. James Cameron is already on his way down there. I wonder if one day there will be another tourist submarine that goes down to see it? With a billionaire or 2 aboard, it's likely some sort of body retrieval operation will be attempted, paid for by the billion/millionaire, though obviously without much urgency. A couple of million is enough to hire a company with an ROV to rig up some retrieval device to at least find it and either lay a plaque there or try and bring it up. If it imploded or suffered a hull breach, there won't be a body to recover. Like attempting to climb the Everest or crashing your personal helicopter, it's an expensive way to die. Since they're all pretty rich, I'm wondering where they'd rank in relative wealth order on the actual Titanic. Top 1% of passengers? Top 10 individuals? Where would they be? And they full well understood the risks yet still bought the ticket and took the ride. Considering the company seems to have lied about how safe the sub actually was, see reports of safety concerns and poor design, I'm not sure the company was being honest to customers about the risks. People keep referring to the sinking of the Titanic as rich folk dying. The overwhelming majority of people who died were poor or middle class. Glad someone pointed this out. Yeah, cruise ships are big and only the first few decks around the outside are practical for luxury cabins. Everything else is windowless and dark and perhaps even below water level. The rich aren't going to pay cruise ship prices for that experience. Cruises, by and large, rely on the working and middle classes to run because they're the ones actually funding the voyage, through volume. The Titanic, being a migratory cruise, absolutely fits that. It was also among the first cruises of its time. The luxury was a huge deal and a big selling point. So while it was certainly known for and attracted the rich, it required a whole fucking lot of working and middle class passengers to run. And NVM the staff on the Titanic. Charles Jockin's account is really unforgettable. It wasn't a cruise ship, it was an ocean liner. The goal of the ship wasn't to sail around luxuriously, it was to transport people across the Atlantic. The ocean liners were eventually retired in favor of jet aircraft. That's why you can't book a ship across the Atlantic anymore. Well, they've had the most authentic Titanic experience in about 100 years. Immersive. Submersive. I can't believe the death count from the Titanic is still rising. Personally, I think they're dead. I think it sunk and they got crushed under the pressure. It happened quick. That's why we can't hear anything off it. That's why there's no signal or SOS. My guess, anyway. They're dead, and it's tragic and horrific. And I get that it's annoying that this is news because they're rich and it's a rich tourist sub to the Titanic and all, and 5 random poor people get killed in bombings and shootings and domestic violence daily all over the world and it's not news, and that's not fair. But these people still are humans with families and it's awful. I hope it was quick for them and they're not suffering in a death trap at the bottom of the ocean right now. One of the passengers from a past expedition said that the sub doesn't even have any form of emergency signal to emit and that it has no way to communicate with the surface since GPS, radio, doesn't work very far underwater, so it's hard to have any idea what happened. The window is apparently not certified for that depth either. All of the warning signs were there. The lawsuits against the company, the past employees stating that the company standards weren't high enough for an exploration of this magnitude, the state of the metal death tube before the descent. This is just Challenger all over again, but instead of miles high in the atmosphere with millions watching, it was miles underwater while nobody was around. The greed of companies will continue to doom people in horrific ways until the end of time because people with more money than we can imagine won't listen to those who know the science. Whoa, hey, that's a carbon fiber death tube to you, buddy, which apparently doesn't show detectable signs of fatigue when it's near failure like metal does. I agree, there's a lot to criticize Ocean Gate and CEO Stockton Rush for here. But I will say this for Rush, he's on that sub too. My moral condemnation of him would be much greater if he hadn't shared equally in the risk himself. As it is, it looks like he'll go down with his ship. The Logitech controller probably didn't kill them. Probably, if anything, from what I understand, it was the most reliable thing on board. They should have gone with the Mad Cats. Those things could survive a nuclear apocalypse or two with nothing more than the original stuck button. Maybe they pressed the rebind key button by accident and couldn't figure out how to get out of that stupid remapping mode. Nightmare fuel. I'm extremely claustrophobic and I have a fear of drowning, so that whole situation gives me a panic attack just thinking about it. I just hope it went quickly. Me too. I was at work when it came on the news and I was like, that is so absolutely terrifying. Well, they almost certainly didn't drown. The water pressure would have killed them first. I feel bad for them, but it's a little like when someone goes to the running of the bulls in Spain and gets trampled by a bull. Like, you had to know there was a very realistic chance of that happening. I'm not saying they deserve to die or anything, but if you don't want to drown, maybe stay away from experimental submarines. From the article in a post above, they hired an engineering director and sandbagged him all throughout the inspection process. Refused to hand over documents on the window, which is rated for 1,300 meters 4,265 feet, and the Titanic dive takes place at 3,962 meters 13,000 feet. Refused to allow him to scan the hull looking for fractures, lying that there are no instruments that can scan the hull for things like that. Company operating the sub fired the engineering director, sued him, then settled out of court. Guess they figured it's easier to just pay him to shut the hell up, rather than risk more of the damning allegations getting out. CEO loudly proclaiming that, after a certain point, safety is just pure waste. Allegedly, in 3 previous dives it lost communication. No sonar buoy, no GPS locator on board. Stupid locator beacons, who needs them? /S. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I'm a marine biologist and have been fortunate enough to take part in some research trips where we've been studying habitats as deep as 6,000 meters with ROVs, remotely operated vehicles. I've had this discussion with colleagues and friends before, but I don't see any practical need for manned submersibles for this type of thing, in research or tourism in this day and age. Many of the top ROVs these days have multiple cameras with 4K video feeds to the surface. Some even have stereoscopic 3D imagery. They're also equipped with manipulator arms and other scientific gear for whatever the needs of your study may be. Compare this to even the less dodgy submersibles like Alvin, and I don't see the benefit of sending a human down in a cramped metal tube/sphere etc. with a tiny viewing window when the robot could provide much better science, or viewing experience, in real time with infinitely less risk. I appreciate in this case it's all about bragging rights and a load of rich people wanting to say they went to the Titanic, but surely people would pay to go out on a research-type vessel and watch lovely high-def footage whilst the ROV pilot navigates around the wreck, with 99% less risk of a horrible death? You can just watch a documentary and see it on camera. I personally wouldn't pay a cent to experience the inconvenience of going on into the middle of the Atlantic on a research vessel to watch a screen. Hey guys, you want to pay to come out in the middle of the ocean and watch a live nature documentary on TV? See, I would totally go out on a boat and watch in real time and ROV explore something like the Titanic. To me that would be a really cool experience. I'd pay for that for sure, and I'd feel like that would be enough bragging rights and a neat adventure to satisfy my desire for novelty. It would be especially cool if I could drive the ROV a little bit. Getting into a small cramped space and actually going down there doesn't sound fun. I'm a successful sailor for the reason that I absolutely do not want to be under the water. I can surf, sail, all sorts of surface stuff with no problem. But the time I snorkeled in the Sea of Cortez by a huge cliff with waves crashing on it, I had a panic and wouldn't let go of the dinghy I came in on, and my brain wouldn't get over even having my eyes open underwater with a simple mask on my face. It was then I learned I probably will never be able to scuba, which is a little disappointing. Being upside down in an experimental airplane, quick EQ2, awesome plane, doing barrel rolls was literally less dangerous feeling to me than being prone to the force of the ocean at shallow depths with a snorkel. I admire people who can do what I cannot. But I also can't for the life of me imagine how one would willingly go down 4 km under thousands of pounds of pressure. In the dark no less. I think that if it's true that the window wasn't rated for the depth of the Titanic, if it's true that the hull of the sub was showing wear, and if it's true that they waited 8 hours to report them missing, then those who made the decision to send people, including a 19-year-old, into potentially fatal depths that the vessel allegedly couldn't handle, need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, if applicable. I'm curious if it was all pointed out by the scientists but denied by funding. Only thinking about it because of morbid curiosity. The CEO of the submarine company is on it, too, so if he signed off on cheap parts or ignored warnings, that's the ultimate no one to blame but yourself. The guy who raised the alarm about the glass was fired, so there's one answer. You couldn't pay me $250,000 to do that. I'm sad and I really hope they're found. I don't care how rich they are. There is a father and son on that sub. It hurts my heart thinking how excited they probably were to go on this bonding trip together. Nobody deserves to die like this. I'm now invested in checking every few hours for a rescue update. I can't believe they're alive. I just hope they didn't spend days suffering. Imagine the horror and guilt the father would be feeling over this fate for his teenage child. Heartbreaking. It was a fucking stupid idea, but they had some money. We're told it would be relatively safe and historical and beneficial to science and all that good chowder. The one guy's son is only 19. Nothing about this is funny. Except for the fact that the company's CEO is down there with them. That's hilarious. That's what the CEO deserves for cutting costs big time. The sub's viewport was only rated for 1,500 meters when it should have been upgraded to the 4,000 meter rated viewport. The CEO is a major scumbag for this. They paid a whole lot of money to die. They could have just given it to me and lived. They could have given it to me and still died if that's what they wanted. It's scary, and of course I want them found alive, but at some point, we have to acknowledge that this is hubris of the highest order. Thoughts? Sad, and I assume the lawsuits start flying and the company never sends a sub down again. The CEO was, on board. Bet he wished he'd sprung for the 4,000 meter glass instead of 1,300 meter glass. It's a sad way to go. I can't imagine how scary that would be. I watched an interview with someone showing off the controls and inside of the submarine, and you couldn't pay me to go down in that thing. They were literally using a game controller to control the sub, and to be fair, game controllers can be useful for controlling things that aren't related to games. The US military sometimes uses them to defuse bombs, but people who have owned the Logitech controller they were using said that it didn't work well and could barely play games, so yeah, there's that. The best we can hope for at this point is that the hull integrity failed quickly and they died pretty much instantly. Probably one of the most horrific ways to die. But they chose to do stupid shit and stupid shit happened. I wouldn't agree if the sub imploded. They likely didn't even register what was happening. Implosion, we'd be merciful given the alternative. We were talking about this earlier, assuming it's not implosion, and I'm not wrong, and they'll simply run out of air, and assuming the CO2 content hits 30%, they'll just pass out. It's a peaceful way. Granted, I'd imagine Therese full on panic and anxiety, but if you have a 4-day countdown, I'd imagine the last few hours the acceptance hits in. They're dead. 100%. Hard to get a more accurate experience as a superfan. It's horrifying, no doubt about it. While we are on the topic, at some point someone in that submarine, if they are alive and waiting, is making jokes to keep morale up, and I'd love to hear what kind of humor people are capable of in those darkest times. Just listened to a podcast about the plane crash in the Andes in the 70s. Apparently, as they heard the two who sought help had been found and a rescue mission was on its way, they immediately began joking that they were going to all sit in seats on the plane and ask what the rescuers were doing there when they arrived. So yeah, apparently your sense of humor will hold up through quite a bit. If they're alive and waiting, then they're sitting shoulder to shoulder in puddles of their own excrement, in pitch black dark, and slowly getting delirious from dwindling oxygen and carbon dioxide buildup. At one point, someone is going to lose consciousness/die before the others, and they'll be sitting next to their comatose body/corpse. Not enough lifeboats, again. When is the last possible survival time? Sometime Thursday. 18 hours ago, U.S. Coast Guard Captain Jamie Frederick said he estimates 40 hours remaining of oxygen. Therefore they will run out 22 hours from now. Yikes. 7 a.m. Thursday. As much as I find the whole thing to be ridiculous, one thing I know for sure is that the father in that sub who brought his son with him is sure regretting it now. Yeah, I think that's what pains me the most, too. Obviously they are all going through hell right now, assuming they are still alive, but I think he must be feeling the worst. Imagine being the kid. Teens is old enough to understand what's happening, and then watching everyone older than you plunge through the 5 stages of grief for their impending death. Send James Cameron down to figure out this whole mess. I was actually wondering if he said anything about this. His documentary and knowledge on this stuff is fascinating. Yep. James Cameron was my first thought when I heard this as well. If he had been a part of this whole adventure, this wouldn't have happened. He made over 30 trips down to the wreckage, including one on September 11th. The entire logistics of this apparently incessant operative organization absolutely baffles me. It's a submersible with a mixture of commercialized equipment and insignificant consumer-grade components. It descends alone to depths of 4,000 meters without any proper propulsion or reinforced external safety measures. What the fresh hell were these people thinking? A sub that small, and such a daunting operation, there should certainly be another sub accompanying it. At the very least a series of unmanned drones that are programmed to follow the sub, and maybe have some sort of distress mode that allows them to float and alert the surface. None of it makes sense. Such an operation should have far more safety and security measures. As divers, we're strongly encouraged to not dive alone, and to always utilize the buddy system. Why the hell wouldn't small private subs do the same? Also, why isn't there another sub ready to be deployed immediately when a situation like this occurs? I understand money and logistics can serve as obstacles, but if it keeps people from dying, then it's worth the investments. So much of this just screams minimum viable product. Like they did just enough to where it works, but not exactly practical or safe. The technology is there. The logistics exist. It just feels like there were so many cut corners. I saw a video by someone that works on subs for the Navy, and she explained that typically emergency subs are deployed/available, but because of the depths this one went to, even if they'd wanted one, it wasn't possible. Also, the deepest sub rescue was at 1,500 feet. This is 13,000 feet. No emergency procedures at all? Exactly, it's just crazy. They paid $250,000 for a Titanic experience. They got it.